In this video, we're going to be taking a look at scientific notation. Now, scientific notation is a useful way to deal with extremely large or extremely small numbers. Now, scientific notation is generally written as a product of some number between 1 and 10, and then an integer power of 10. So for part 1 and part 2, I want you to express both those numbers in scientific notation. Now remember that it's a product of some number between 1 and 10. So we're going to have to either move our decimal place to the left or right in order to get some number between 1 and 10. So in question 1, you'd have to move the decimal place to the left a certain amount of units. And in question 2, you'd have to move the decimal place to the right a certain amount of units. Now for part 3, I want you to subtract those two numbers which are in scientific notation. Now the trick in subtracting or adding numbers that are in scientific notation is that each number must be written with the same exponent. So those two aren't written with the same exponent. One has an exponent of 5, one has an exponent of 4. So you need to first write both of them with the same exponent, which means you're going to have to move a decimal place if needed to accomplish this, which you will in number 3. Now in part 4, you're to multiply those two numbers which are in scientific notation. Now remember, when multiplying two numbers in scientific notation, what you do is you multiply those two numbers, but then you're going to add their exponents. However, when you divide two numbers in scientific notation, what you do is divide the two numbers there, but then you're going to subtract the exponents. So I want you to now pause the video and try these 4 examples on your own. Now remember that scientific notation is written as a product of some number between 1 and 10 and an integer power of 10. So if we look at question number 1 here, our decimal place is actually right here on the end. So what we would have to do is move this decimal place over a bunch of times until we get a number between 1 and 10. So in that case, we'd have to stop right here between the 8 and the 4, and we'd place our decimal point right there. So if we were to move our decimal place that many spots to the left, you'll notice that you've actually moved it 8 places to the left, and so you would have 8.43 times 10 to the 8 because you've moved it 8 places to the left. Now for question number 2, it's a little bit different. You have a very small number as opposed to a very large number. So the number in question number 2 is written here. What we want to do is the same thing. We need to write this number as a product of some number between 1 and 10 and an integer power of 10. So I need my decimal point to go right here between the 2 and the 5, and that would give me a number between 1 and 10. So we're going to take this decimal point, we're going to move it a certain amount of spots until we reach that spot right there, and you'll notice that you had to move your decimal point 7 times to the right. So in this case, you would have 2.5 times 10 to the negative 7. So you'll now notice that each time the decimal is moved to the left, you actually add 1 to this exponent up here. And each time the decimal is moved to the right, you actually subtract 1 to the exponent here. Now in part 3, to subtract those two numbers in scientific notation, like I said, each number must be written with the exact same exponent. So you can do this one of two ways. You can either convert this 5 to a 4 to match with this number, or you could do the opposite, convert this 4 to a 5 to match this number. I'm going to show you both ways. Let's first start by trying to convert the 10 to the 5 to 10 to the 4. Now, if I want to convert 10 to the 5 to 10 to the 4, what I would have to do is take the decimal point, which is right behind this 7 here, and I'd have to move it 1 digit to the right. Remember, whenever you move the decimal point to the right 1 digit, you would have to subtract 1 from your exponent. And I'm going to keep the 5 times 10 to the power 4. Now we have the exact same powers, and all we have to do now is subtract these two numbers, 70 minus 5.2. 70 minus 5.2 gives me 64.8 times 10 to the power 4, because we have the same exponent. However, that answer isn't written in proper scientific notation. Proper scientific notation states that this value here has to be a number between 1 and 10. So we need to just move this decimal place over 1 unit to the left. And so that would mean if I'm moving my decimal place over 1 unit to the left, what I'm going to do is add 1 to my exponent, so it becomes 10 to the power 5. Now, like I said, you could have done it the opposite way. So instead of changing 7 times 10 to the power 5 to the power 4, what I'm now going to do is change this power of 4 to a power of 5. Now remember, to change that to the power of 5, we would have to move our decimal place 1 unit to the left, because that means adding 1 to your exponent. So we would have 0.52 times 10 to the power 5. Now we have the same powers. We can easily subtract these two numbers of 7 and 0.52. So 7 minus 0.52 gives me 6.48 times 10 to the 5. And this is proper scientific notation because we have a number that's between 1 and 10 here. Now for part 4, to multiply two numbers in scientific notation, remember when you multiply those two numbers, what you do to those exponents is that you add them. However, when you divide two numbers in scientific notation, then you would subtract those exponents. So we have multiplication here. So all we have to do here is multiply the two numbers, 3.5 times 9. Now when we multiply 3.5 times 9, we get 31.5. And like I said, when we multiply two numbers in scientific notation, what we're going to do is add those two exponents. So it's going to be times 10 to the positive 2, because we have negative 2 plus 4. And so that's my answer. However, this final answer isn't correct. That's not proper scientific notation. The reason why is because this number here isn't a number between 1 and 10. Well, that's easy. All we have to do is convert it to a number between 1 and 10, which means we're going to take this decimal place and move it 1 unit to the left. And remember what I said, when we move a decimal place to the left 1 unit, what we do is we add 1 to our exponent. So 10 to the 2 becomes 10 to the 3. And that there is your final answer.